Hi guys, my name is Sel. Welcome to Wait, Let Me Think, a journal podcast where I get to open up, reflect, and shamelessly ramble as I do anyway. Hello, welcome back to this wonderful slice of hell that I call my podcast. I'm joined by Chewy's, my dog's, little pitter-pattering of his paws. Can you hear it? Little Chewy ASMR. Chewy, would you like to breathe into the microphone? Yep. Oh, he's trying to eat you. We're here in this lovely evening with candles as Chewy tries to bite my finger off. And we're going to talk about some shows, some films I've recently watched, because I'd like to... Oh, he's going wild. I'd like to have a short discussion while, I don't know, drinking my tea. I'm very cozied up. Tomorrow is going to be my first day of my master's, which is a wild and fun ride simultaneously. Mostly wild just because I can't wrap my head around the fact that I am 21 and also about to be done with my school career. Well, for now, for the time being. Maybe this is just a long hiatus for me to end up coming back, and Chewy's going wild amidst the pillows. Anyways, I studied, arts and culture for my bachelor's, and now I'm studying arts and society, so I know a thing or two about commenting and analyzing works of art and media, and I can tell you right now that none of those skills will be showed for in this podcast episode. This will only be chaos and not actual cohesive thoughts, because one, I'm getting distracted by my dog already, and two, it's 10 p.m., which means my brain has shut down 3 hours ago, approximately, and three, when has this channel ever been structural, really? Be honest. Okay, getting into the meat of things. I love saying that. I feel like I say that every single time I try to record a podcast episode, which is many, but none of you get to witness that. And now you do. Now is one of the very rare times that you do. So, the meat of things. Things that I've watched as of late. I'm gonna go at random because I wanted to discuss Ben Barnes first and foremost because I am predictable in many, many ways. All of my friends and family are tired of me talking about Ben Barnes. They are sick of it. They no longer want to hear any of it. I hear you, folks. And I'm just going to keep disappointing you because guess what? I'm doing it again. Gold Digger follows, I believe, Benjamin and Julia, who are two lovers by chance. And Julia just happens to be 20 years older than Benjamin. They meet in London, I believe. Oh, Chewy wants to speak. Am I right, sir? No, he's not saying anything. Okay. They met in London while Julia was having a date. If her name is not Julia this whole time, I'm sorry, but we're gonna go with it. She was in London because she wanted to go to a bunch of museums. She's into that stuff. That was her career, and her family doesn't really respect her. Her ex-husband is a jerk, but we don't really know how, and her 3 children are disrespectful to her, except for maybe her only daughter. Her only daughter is a bit more pro-Julia, but even then, she's very much a mistreated woman in her own life, and Benjamin is this young, funky, fresh guy. He's not actually very funky, he's very clean-cut and almost cookie-cutter, nice dude who looks also very nice. I mean handsome. Not like he hasn't... I don't know if Ben Barnes looks like he's a nice person. I think so. I have a resting bitch face, so maybe I don't recognize when others do as well. But my knee-jerk reaction wasn't to think that Ben Barnes has a resting bitch face. But that would be an interesting podcast topic for another time. Anyways, this show, before we even get into what I really thought about it, I'm gonna give it a solid 3 out of 5, 3.5 if we're counting suspense, which I do. I like grading things based on how they make me feel. I'm a very affect-based person, so I give it a 3.5 for everything it does, including the suspense. I haven't really watched a British show since, God, I don't know, Skins? Maybe Sherlock. That was a long time ago. I wasn't a huge Sherlock fan. I was a little bit more into Doctor Who, I have to be honest, and even then I just really liked David Tennant. Sorry. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, that's the only reason why I was there. I do not call myself a fan. I was just thirsty. And Skins I did get into depth with, at least for a few of the seasons. I was really into Effie Stoneham as an 8th grader. You can't imagine or even begin to fathom, really, the complexes it later gave me. Regardless of that, I had been essentially consuming mostly American TV media for many, many years. I've watched a few European things for classes, but to enjoy on a whim, it has mostly been American, and it shows. I really couldn't get into the tone of the show for a long time. I was very compelled by the story, not just by Ben Barnes's acting or face. I have to be honest, I sometimes forgot that he was in it because I was so interested by the story and the fact that Julia is this woman taking back her voice and her ability to create boundaries and to stand up to the people that she loves, which is super complex, and that really, really interested me. And also just like, you know, this whole age gap thing is super taboo because it's usually clouded by men abusing and exploiting young girls, and for once this is a story not only centering an elderly woman. I wouldn't call 60 elderly at all, but an older woman than what is usually portrayed in the media, and also her desires as a fully realized adult, and then her desires for also a fully realized adult, because Benjamin is 40 years old, so it's not like he's some random punk he picked off the street. Actually, their meeting was very elegant. They met in a museum, for God's sake, and he's, I believe, a copywriter of some sorts. He works with literature. So, you know, they're very sophisticated people, and it seems like they're very mature. I gotta say, I didn't care much for the drama of it all. Like, the twists towards the end, maybe it's actually the last episode. I didn't really care. I don't. And maybe that's because British writers don't do drama as well as Americans do. Perhaps. I don't know. Riverdale would, you know, be a counter argument for that statement. But I also feel like the writers did a really good job at portraying Julia's anxiety with becoming her own person again after having kids. And her desire was compelling. It's just like the whole drama of it being this kid named Benjamin was less important to me. So tonality wise, it was very interesting for me to get back into very, very dry British conversation and humor. It was anxiety inducing for me because I didn't know how to take it. I've been living in Western Europe for 3 years now, since the beginning of my college experience. And I have to say that talking to Europeans is still often very awkward compared to talking to Asians or Americans, for example. And that's probably because Americans and Asians are fake nice first and then awkward later. And Europeans are awkward first and then nice if they like you later. And that really showed. That really came through in this show because I remember just having to pause the hell out of it. I would watch while I was in Hong Kong doing my study abroad, and so I would be in the living room with my whole family because we were in a tiny apartment when there was no other space, and I would just be like shaking in my seat, and then I'd be I'd be making stress sounds. I'd just be like, and then my mom would be like, what are you on about? And then I'll be like, I'm watching Gold Digger, and then she's like, she was also kind of compelled to watch it because of how much I was reacting to it physically. That was really interesting because I couldn't remember the last time. Actually, maybe it was Haunting of Hill House that I reacted so primally to, but that's just because I was scared out of my boots. And yeah, what else can I say about this show that I enjoyed? I really enjoyed the performance done by Julia's daughter. I thought she did well. I really, really hated Julia's first son. My lord, do I hate him. So much. And then Julia's youngest, the second son, he is, I can't remember, Archie Renault, I think is his name. I'm not going to pronounce it the French way because I will just be embarrassing myself and we don't need that. But he is also going to be Mao in Shadow and Bone alongside Ben Barnes, so that's interesting. I'm looking forward to that. His character, I think I connected to the least out of all of the... Actually, no, that's not true. I probably connected the least to Julia's ex-husband just because he was such a butthole. But he did a really good job at portraying said butthole, the actor. And I think there's also something to be said about the fact that Julia is kind of old money and how white the cast is compared to Julia's ex's new wife / girlfriend, who is also Julia's ex-best friend, and the fact that she's literally the only black person in the show. I think that they did that on purpose to show how alienating it was for this woman who, I can't for the life of me remember her name, but it was pretty interesting to watch the show because I had to get into the mindset of like, oh, okay, this is a white British family and it's so far away from my own, and it took a while to connect. And then once I sort of saw the character development of Julia's best friend, or ex-best friend, however you see their relationship at the end of it, she started looking at Julia's family and Julia's ex's family as the other, because she would be like, oh, this family is kind of whack, and she'd be calling her family back home and she'd be like, yeah, you know how white traditions are. That was super interesting. I don't get a lot of that kind of perspective of, I guess, self-awareness from media predominantly written and created by white people. They usually see themselves as a sort of universal experience and they don't place themselves in respect to other communities in their country, area, environment, whatever. So yes, overall, I am looking forward to seeing more depictions of adult women, one, putting their feet down, and demanding space in places that they've been alienated from in their whole lives, much longer than younger women have. Of course, I completely identify with younger women and their struggles, but I think it's particularly interesting to look at it from the lens of never being there in there your whole life, and then having these new generations of people like you who do not take no for an answer and are willing to risk it all to be in the room where it happens, and then you sort of have to saddle up and decide to do the same, even though your whole life you've been abused by this whole system into complete silence and don't know how to do that and do not even have the language to start demanding things for your own happiness. I think that is so real. I think it is so important for women who have had families and husbands and that cookie cutter nuclear family life, and decide to start asking what they would like instead and what they find important. I think that's lovely stuff to watch. And honestly, Gold Digger would have gotten much higher rates from me had they explored that more, had they leaned into that sort of political and psychological aspect. I think they still wanted it to be a not necessarily light but digestible drama, and that part I didn't really care for. So, yes, let's move on, shall we? More recently, I've also seen Tenet by, oh my god, what's his name? Watch all the film bros start typing in the comment section going, how can you forget his name? Christopher Nolan. Okay, right. Christopher Nolan directed Tenet. At first I forgot that Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan have different sets of work. I thought that Jonathan Nolan made Inception and Christopher Nolan made Westworld. Silly me. Silly me. Tenet I gave, I don't know, a 3 out of 5, maybe less. Honestly, if I gave Gold Digger a 3 out of 5, I would give Tenet 2 out of 5. Before everybody gets angry at me. For the... it's like, I don't even want to say it, but for the beauty of it, she was a beaut to look at, okay? The movie was beautiful. It was well done. We know that Christopher Nolan can do really nice shots. He knows how to make his action sequences. He knows how to build suspense. My suspense was built. He succeeded, and then some, at that particular field. What he is not so great at is telling compelling, fully satisfying stories. I have to be honest. I haven't watched all of his films. I don't care to. If Tenet is the most hyped up thing he's done in a while and flopped that badly for me in terms of the story, I don't care to watch the rest of his work until somebody I respect recommends it to me. This is not to come across as pretentious when it comes to action films or, you know, things of the sort. I love me a good blow-up movie. That's what I call them. I love explosions. I love stuff with, like, secret agents and spies and government conspiracies, and I love sci-fi. I love weird ideas mixed with people with heightened sort of training, saving the world. You know, that is my cup of tea. But I have to be honest, Mr. Nolan, look, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that Robert Pattinson and Mr. Washington had so much romantic and sexual tension throughout the whole film, and for the protagonist to just be straight for no reason. I absolutely did not see the protagonist falling for the woman happening. I did not see it at all. And I was talking to a friend of mine who is a man, and he said, well, I mean, I could tell that he was gonna fall for the girl, but it was a bit abrupt for me. And I was like, well, how could you tell? And then I realized just because there's another character who is a big character and also a woman, therefore, automatically we assume that they're going to be love interests. And this is 2020. Sir, Mr. Nolan, you're gonna have to do a lot more work than that to prove to me that they would have made interesting love interests for each other, okay? Because they were nothing of the sort. They were nothing of the sort, sir. I'm sorry. And also, I scrolled through Tumblr immediately after watching the film, mostly because I had only watched it with Gwen and we had sort of exhausted each other of like our opinions of the movie, so I wanted to, you know, read other people's thoughts and see what they liked or disliked about the film. And so many film bros in the Tumblr tag were like, haha, I'm a genius. You guys are all stupid for not getting it. I can't believe you guys don't understand what Christopher Nolan meant. That was such an easy movie. I can't, like, literally, I got it the first 10 minutes of the film. It's not confusing at all, and this was literally the best film I've ever seen. What? Firstly, the science of it. I think, I don't know, it was a very fast-paced film, even though it was 2.5 hours long, but I feel like Nolan made the point that the technology wasn't made yet at that point in the timeline. It was made in the future, so we don't understand how it works, and that's the whole point. We're not supposed to understand this whole wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey thing. We are supposed to just surrender to the feeling, and we can rationalize, I guess, how the plot works, but like the point of trying to understand the science behind it is that we shouldn't, because it hasn't existed yet. And it's really interesting to me that that has become the center of the debate of how good this movie is, because it's just a place for people to say either they get it or not, which, like, okay, you didn't even explain what it is if you did get it. And two, it says nothing about how good the filmmaking was. And I think the acting was pretty good across the board, except for the villain. He was believable only sometimes. I feel like a lot of American movies... Oh, it's not even an American movie, right? Christopher Nolan is British? Okay, confusing. I don't know, is it? I feel like a lot of films in Hollywood, at least, they just choose whatever kind of Eastern European or vaguely European accent, and then suddenly it's menacing, which it isn't. You gotta do better than that. And you gotta have a more compelling backstory if you're gonna make a film of this scale, you know what I mean? Like a Fast and Furious movie, I guess I get it. But, dude, I thought this was supposed to be a big deal, you know? And, yeah, I thought that the action sequences were very, very, very cool. I love watching stuff for the action and for the editing and for the stunts. And that was really sick, how they did a lot of, like, reversing things amidst the cars, the blow-ups, the hand-to-hand combat. I would love to see more action films use unconventional techniques in the future. You know, I hope this encourages the mind-numbing genre of Hollywood action to try something new, you know? I'm super excited for that. I think I could definitely see, like, a Kingsman-esque type of, like, stylistic film be combined with something a little bit more sci-fi, such as the Tenet concept. What else can I talk about? Robert Pattinson, I hope he's okay out there. I heard he got diagnosed with COVID. But I would also like to congratulate him for doing a great job. I mean, I know he's, like, he's done a lot of great things in his career, like a lot of great roles in films. I know this. I haven't watched most of it, but that's just because I am, I don't know, lazy, uninterested. But I was super excited to realize that I really, really enjoy his face on the big screen. I was a Twilight fan. I wasn't a Edward fan. I wasn't on his team at all. I think I was on Team Jacob because of Taylor Lautner, but I wasn't on Team Jacob. Like, he was a crap character. And also, I know that bringing Twilight up, it would make Robert Pattinson actually want to probably bite his own finger off, as Chewie is doing to me right now. The scoring for Tenet, not so coolio. I also watched Dunkirk when it was in the cinemas, and I remember how crazy the Oscars went for that film, when really, in my humble opinion, it was mediocre. Was it a great war film? Honestly, I'm bored of watching war films at this point, but it was a beautiful sensory experience. But if the Oscars are going to go as hard for Tenet as they did Dunkirk, I will be angry. I don't think that is justified at all, in any way. Continuing in our doomed list, we have Criminal Minds. Criminal Minds. How did this start? How did this come about? I am not a big criminal thriller show type of person. My grandmother is. I had to endure many a weekends where we literally only watched murder mysteries. It literally probably physically hurt her to watch anything other than the Investigation Discovery Channel, unless it was, what is it, Bold and Beautiful that she's into? That one. So not really my jam necessarily, but I did go to Germany with my friends, and we ended up watching Mindhunter together, and I haven't seen all of it, but that is a well done show. Of course, trigger warnings, because Mindhunter gets pretty graphic, and it's a bit of a psychological thriller, I would say. Not only do we get a look into serial killers, but we sort of feel like we're really getting into the minds of them, and we're not necessarily empathizing or sympathizing with them for them, but we are seeing things from their point of view, and that's twisted and not always enjoyable, but I love the twisted stuff, I have to say. And Jonathan Groff, of course, delivers a wonderful performance, as he always does. I've never expected less from him. But also, the directing of that show has been glorious. Glorious, I say. God, I made so many interesting and compelling points to my friends, but now I can't remember any of them, so that's not valid anymore. Pretend like I said something super interesting and groundbreaking here. But as I try to remember what I thought about it, I thought that it was super stylistic. I thought that it is so well done in terms of the sound, the suspense building, the knowledge building. Getting to know the characters has been great. There's an element of surrealism to the show. I can't tell you where it comes from. I have an inkling that Jonathan Groff's character starts to question his own sanity as he progresses into the mind of these deeply disturbed literal psychopaths. Stylistically, I feel like it is written like it is a play. There is very, 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 very little sort of realist conversation. It almost feels like watching theater. Like, characters don't really overlap. They don't really talk on top of each other. Sometimes they cut each other off, but it's almost so well rehearsed that you don't notice it. A lot of the times the music stops in certain points. There are musical themes in the scoring that reoccurs, and super interesting to me. There's like this one sort of reoccurring beeping noise, and it almost sounds like an alarm, like a phone alarm, but I wonder what it actually is based on, that sound. Also, the main character's girlfriend is a super interesting character, especially considering the fact that this was based in, the 70s, and she is this sort of, like, trailblazing feminist, take no prisoners type of personality. She's very sarcastic. She gives everybody a hard time in the best possible way. I enjoy listening to her talk very much. There's a lot of really good symbolism, and it's so meaty. Also, I was supposed to start talking about Criminal Minds, but I've gone off on a tangent, so may as well rate Mindhunter. I was going to call it Mastermind. Where did Master come from? Mindhunter, I would rate a very solid, 5 out of 5 right now. I don't know how it ends, so I'm going to put it at a 4.5 out of 5. But it's really good, even if it's a show filled with white people, made by probably, white people, probably for white people. I think there's a lot to unpack with that show. There is a lot of, interesting gender reading, so much interesting gender reading, and also the mother wound and how that is, or I guess that was a trope, used and believed in real life to be this sort of cause for bad apples, and how, of course, the women will mess up their sons, and that's why they become such horrible serial killers. And I would like to end the discussion on Mindhunter by saying women get broken up with, and they have a mental breakdown where they maybe cry for a week or two. And men get broken up with, and they have a mental breakdown where they murder a woman or two. And that is a very, very, very interesting thing to realize in reality. But Criminal Minds, I started watching for Matthew Gray. I have to be honest. Gubler, Luxor. That rhymes, and I'm sorry I can't pronounce your last name. I will do better next time. But for now, I'm way too tired to look it up. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this show as much as I did, probably because I started watching it after I watched the few episodes of Mindhunter, so I was on the serial killer high, which, never thought I would say those words, but I guess my Sagittarius rising is fully taking control of my personality now. And it's been a fun ride. It's been a wondrous ride. I think it's so funny, one, to watch something that Jeff Davis has created, because I was like a Teen Wolf super fan back in the very, very old days. It feels like millenniums ago. And Criminal Minds was created in the mid-2000s, really, or mid-2000s, right? Maybe early 2000s. And the acting, directing, editing style are so different to what TV shows are now. Especially watching it after Mindhunter is just comical to me. But yeah, I really enjoy getting small puzzle pieces in bite-sized episodes, as it turns out. And I gotta say, I'm kind of really into it. I used to watch Castle. That used to be my big thing with, killers. And I watched a wee bit of Lucifer, but I don't enjoy it as much as I did Castle, and I do Criminal Minds now. I gotta be honest. So, Criminal Minds gets a solid 3 out of 5, I feel like. Enjoyable. It's a good time. I really, really like Garcia and Derek. Penelope, right? Penelope and Derek. I really, really, really enjoy their characters. I feel like they are the Leo and Geminis of the dynamic. I think they're super interesting. I started watching it for Reed, but I stayed for Derek. For realsies. Getting into more serious stuff, I tried watching The Favorite, which I know was a huge Oscar contender a while back, and not my cup of tea. I couldn't finish it, I have to be honest. I do that sometimes where I'll try something that I feel like could be my vibe, and then it just doesn't work out, and I don't really like to force myself to keep watching things I'm not interested in, and yeah, I think it was just a little too gruesome for me. I mean, I understand that it's probably... I mean, obviously I haven't finished it, so I don't know what the whole point of it was. But from the beginning of it, the, first almost hour that I watched, it felt like a huge commentary on class, on the upper class in particular, especially considering all of the gossip and the excess and the politics of court, which are actually a lot of my favorite things. I love watching period dramas. I love watching sort of the upper class get into their upper class quarrels, but I think The Favorite was just too real, and that's probably why it won so many awards and got so much recognition, which, good for them, but it wasn't it for me, fam. Also, I mean, so far it was a sapphic story, and I believe that it remains so. I'm not sure if that was the whole point of it, but it was very toxic and manipulative, and the lady, I don't remember her name, her character, but she pretty much manipulates the queen by using sex to get what she wants politically. I'm not into that. It was just a little too gross for me. And so I abandoned it and will probably be watching The Great, the one with Elle Fanning instead. That's probably more my speed. So after talking about a fail, let's talk about a win, huh? My scene goes to Jamaica. And my scene goes to Hollywood. I fell into this rabbit hole on YouTube where I started watching people talk about products from the early 2000s, late 90s even, maybe. And I stumbled upon a video about all the Barbie dolls and their counterparts, sort of like the fashion and beauty dolls that were produced and franchised at the time. So this included Barbie, Bratz, My Scene, so many others. And I ended up falling into a hole of just watching a bunch of old Mycene webisodes. And now I have to ask, why did I ever stop watching them? Oh my god. Firstly, they are much more raunchy than I remember. I know Bratz gets a little bit more ballsy. I don't like that word. I know Bratz gets a little bit more daring. There we go. When it comes to their topics, I feel like they're a bit more daring when it comes to romantic interests and when it comes to insulting, like, I don't know, the Tweevils. But Mycene goes full on. They talk about, well, quite a few interesting things that I feel like are much more adult, late high school conversations. They're not really stuff for, like, early elementary kids to watch, unlike Barbie. And I don't think I really realized that when I was young. I didn't really look at them that way, but of course they were 16-year-olds, apparently, New Yorkers who lived alone and only ever went shopping and concert making, holding events, and being in movies and going to Jamaica. So I don't know what they were on. Entertainment-wise, it holds up, especially Mycene Goes to Hollywood. I think I watch that at least like once a year or once every 2 years, just because it's a very solid favorite. I know a lot of the lines by heart. Lindsay Lohan never gets old in that movie. Delancey, I think, was my favorite in that one, although I'm starting to realize that I'm actually a Noli. I'm a Noli, which never thought I would be. I feel like I'm a little bit of Madison and Noli. I always wanted to be Delancey because she was like the cool, outdoorsy, I surf, I skate, and I do everything that none of you can. But turns out I don't do any of those things, and I settled for yoga instead. Also, Noli is Japanese. Apparently she's half Japanese. I always thought she was vaguely Asian, but even now I can't tell. I feel like I can tell that Jade from Bratz is Asian, but I can't fully pin that on Noli. But yeah, let's talk about the actual films. Mycene Goes to Jamaica, an absolute mess. I can't believe also Barbie is an actual character in Mycene. I cannot believe Barbie goes through such a horrible time with open and honest communication with her boyfriend. I believe his name is River. He is not Ken in this franchise, but they are equally basic. But yeah, the whole dodginess of like Madison and River and their whole like, are we flirting? Are we not flirting? I feel like if you have to ask, there's probably already something a little bit problematic with like boundaries there, and Madison did kind of like River, but this was before apparently River asked Barbie out or that Madison knew. Too much, okay? There's a reason why I probably didn't watch this in my youth. I hadn't seen Mycene Goes to Jamaica. That's why I decided to watch it recently. It would have been way too complicated for me to wrap my head around, or maybe I would have been super enthralled by the drama of it all. Which says something about young me. But watching that in retrospect, I had to stop after Barbie like ran away crying because she saw Madison and River like hugging each other. If his name is not River, this is gonna be a little bit awkward, but I'm sure nobody cares. But yeah, that was like a whole thing, and the animation was funky. Like, it did not hold up well. Mycene Goes to Hollywood is much, much better in terms of animation. It is much more recent, too, so it has that advantage. But, Mycene Goes to Hollywood gets a solid 4 out of 5. I don't like the emotional drama that Mycene films have. I feel like Barbie movies and Bratz movies have less stakes. I feel like Mycene Goes Hollywood, when Madison starts sort of like kind of betraying her best friends, like I get actually emotionally invested and then I get anxiety from it, and I couldn't watch that again. I had to stop watching. So I feel like I don't want to give it a solid 5 out of 5 just because there's way too much drama than necessary for a supposedly light and fluffy Barbie movie. But you know what? I appreciate it. A New Yorker getting lost in the sauce of Hollywood feels valid and real and tangible. So it's a believable story. It's just a lot of freaking drama for a kid's film. Continuing on. Lastly, let's talk about a movie I thoroughly enjoyed and will also be giving a 5 out of 5 review, which is happening right now, is the film Get Out. Yep, this is the first time I watched it because I was too scared to watch it on my own because I heard that it was a bit of a thriller / horror film. It's not a horror, it's just a thriller, but there are a lot of jump scares, and I can't do that on my own. My friends and I don't really get together to watch things that are scary. I usually do that with my family, and I hadn't been living with them for 3 years prior to this. So, now that my family is living with me again, I decided to submit to these very, very jump scary movies. But man, racial thrillers, racial horror films, wonderful. So good. So good. I'm sure I am screaming into a void at this point because everybody's said that it was good, and you all believe it because you've seen it too, most likely. But I'm late to the party. My apologies for my tardiness. I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I understand why you're all here now. I understand what you've been saying about it. The scene that really, really stuck with me was the scene of them doing the bidding for our main character and how they did it in silence. Which they did it in silence because, spoiler alert, should have said that earlier, they were trying to be quiet so that this protagonist wouldn't hear them. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name anymore. But it's also, I feel like, a huge metaphor for how oppressors in society often practice their oppression in these very clear-cut structures that are silent and almost invisible. And because they are often an underlying structure and are invisible or less so talked about, so it's almost like they're not real, it gaslights minorities and revokes the ability for them to talk about it because there's no language for it. I think that's a literal translation of that, and I think that's such a great and smart way of representing how essentially colonizers and white people have created a system for Black people and specifically African Americans in the US to kill them. They have created systems to kill them in such a way that it takes away the sound, it takes away the language so that people can't talk about them, and it forces African American communities, it forces any sort of oppressed minority community to submit to silence and to feel like they're the ones that are going essentially crazy because they are constantly gaslit, they're constantly invalidated. But it's playing games, it's abuse, it's manipulation, and they did that so well. They did that so well in that film. And I also really, really enjoy the fact that there's still humor in there, considering who directed it. You know, I really, really like the fact that, spoiler alert, our Black protagonist gets a not happy ending, but gets an ending where he is safe and he gets to move on with his life and he's not haunted by this family anymore. He's the final girl and he finishes the job, for lack of a better term. I feel like we don't see a lot of that. I think a lot of minority stories, especially in films, often end up in really unhappy situations and just like really sad endings, and I'm tired of seeing that. I'm tired of seeing tortured Black characters, tortured gay characters just keep getting tortured and torturous endings. I don't believe in that anymore. We're on to happy endings, babes. Happy endings only. I only want fun, love, safety for our minority protagonists. It was such a solid film. I don't know what else to say about it. I liked that he experimented with the editing style and the directing style, especially with how, when the main character started getting hypnotized and he was falling into, I can't remember what the space is called anymore, but he gets into that space where he dissociates and he's not in touch with his physical body anymore, and he's no longer in control, which is such a great metaphor for racial oppression and colonization as well. It was just really well done. I want to watch Us, but I'm a little too terrified to do so. So that's going to take a while, but I will be watching Antebellum when it comes out in the cinemas. I'll be watching with my cousin Melchior, so I'm super excited to see that. And yeah, what a good note to end it on, I feel like. Thank you for listening to this podcast so far. I'm literally already sleepy, so I talked myself to sleep. I really enjoyed reviewing some of these things. I don't know how coherent I was, but you know what? I had a grand old time, and I hope you did too. And let me know what you thought about these films and these TV shows that I mentioned. I know that most of them are well liked. I hope people respond to My Scene, because I would love to get into debates about My Scene. And what else? Yeah, like, just thanks for listening, you know? I'm fully getting into the groove of creating content again. And yeah, I'm literally just almost mumbling now because I'm falling asleep, so I'm going to end it here. I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say have a great day wherever you are. Tell me what you've been enjoying or what you think I might enjoy based off of the ratings I've given the last topics, subjects. Wow. Yes. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good noon. Wherever you are, because I'm going to bed now. You look great, by the way. Did anybody tell you that today? You look beautiful. Okay, good night. Bye.